Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we've been working on this craft to upgrade our tanker ship, and it's nearly ready to go, but we don't have quite the Delta V that we need in this upper stage. Now, I don't want to remove the fuel from this tank. If it's necessary, I will, but I don't want to. Next up, we just want to remove this Kerbal S4 128, and this is going to give us some potential weight issues here. We'll have to test to see what our Delta Vs in our first and second stages end up looking like by upgrading this to a 256. But that'll be what we're going to try to do. I'm not 100% convinced that this is a great idea. But we can grab our strut connectors here, go up to quad coupling, and do a quick design test to see how this will end up holding up. So I want to grab these strut connectors, connect from here to somewhere around maybe about here or so. That should do. And we'll see what this ends up feeling like. So let's put this out on the pad for a quick Delta V test. I'm not... Actually, we appear to have broken the staging here. Okay, so we're going to have to redo the staging. That's fine. This definitely goes down here. These chutes are going to go basically at the top. So this is going to end up being somewhere up here-ish for now. And then these all fire, then this separation doesn't happen here. What separation is this? Okay, this separation happens down here. The fairing I will probably manually actuate, so we'll put that up here for now. Okay, let's just start at the bottom and work our way to the top. So we've got all of these engines that fire right away. Then we've got this decoupler and this engine that fires. That is correct. Then we've currently got this decoupler and this engine that is absolutely inaccurate. However, this detachment would happen next. Then this detachment and this. These two parachutes can go up here. Are these drogues or mains? These are drogues. Okay, that looks good. That engine plate there. And then these 8 parachutes. Yes, this all looks correct now in terms of staging. So we'll save that, and let's do a quick Delta V test. If we pass this Delta V test, then we can just take this thing up into orbit to save time. If not, we'll revert this back and do some changes here. I'm a little concerned about our upper stage weight at this point. So I think that our super heavy launch vehicle is going to be a little bit potentially underpowered at this weight capacity. This is a lot of weight up here at this point. We're carrying a lot of fuel. No doubt about that. 1.73 is not too bad, though. This is about the same weight as a Starship, I think. So that should be good. The main question is this enough to get us into a reasonable orbit? Also, look at that. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so that's definitely noted. So we'll revert that back to vehicle assembly here. We could just use a launch stability enhancer for that. The question is that indicative of a wiggle problem later on? So we're going to grab a launch stability enhancer here, one of these bad boys, and that's just going to be connected like somewhere over here or so. Snap that on, please, and we'll just connect it like that. Okay, so that goes in that first stage. That seems absolutely fine. Otherwise, this should be good to go. So we'll put that back out on the pad. We didn't actually get to test our Delta V there, but that is indicative of a potential wiggle issue, and we'll keep an eye on that as we go through the atmosphere here. We definitely would not like a wiggle to break out, and if that does happen, we'll need to determine where we need additional structural integrity. That's okay. We can definitely do that. So let's get a test launch of this thing going. It appears that the wiggle is here. Let's take it off and test that. Okay. It did straighten out as we got this going. But I think that we have a structural integrity issue here. If that is indeed the case, then we should do a stress test on that. However, a stress test is not conducive to this being a real flight. So I want to point that out. We're at about a 5-kilometer apoapsis, and we're stressing. Let's go. Well, There's definitely a little bit of wiggle to it. No doubt about it. This is solid here. This is not a solid joint. We can definitely see that there's a significant amount of wiggling happening. So we're going to have to do something about that, almost certainly. No, almost about it. We are certainly going to have to do something about that. I'd hoped that these struts would solve that problem for us. They appear to have not. But this doesn't tell us what we need to know about our delta V at this point. So let's just hold attitude here for the moment as best we can. We know we need to address this situation, and we will do that. But I'm just going to continue to hold attitude here. We can see our apoapsis height is not very high at all. Some of this is being lost to the wiggle. There's no doubt about that. Okay, engine cutoff. Whoa, hang on. We didn't shift over to this when we separated. That's noted. Okay, we need to deal with that wiggle. There's no doubt about that. I expected to have the camera control shift over. That's how it normally works. But that's just a small procedural difference. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to make some changes here. We're going to have some cubic octagonal struts, much like these. They're going to go about here, and we're going to change where these strut connectors are connected to instead be like this. Then I'm also going to connect from... Hang on, I just want the strut connectors. From about here to about here, like that. Then, I'm also thinking about connecting from, like, here? Can we even do that? No, we can't. Let's see if that fixes our wiggle problem with the additional holding points there from different locations. That may or may not solve it. Okay, the next question that I had was delta V in the second stage. I feel like we didn't get going as fast as we could have there. That said, a lot of that had to do with our stress test ascent profile. So the ascent profile could definitely be modified, and I'm going to do that here. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like, and even if we don't end up switching over from the Super Heavy, that's okay. We can just be prepared for that. So if that's just the way this happens to work, I'll just have to keep an eye on it. Okay. It seems maybe a little bit more solid. Maybe. But let's see how this ends up going. This is actually, I think, less solid. Look at that wiggle right off the bat. Okay. There's definitely a weak joint here. Okay, we'll revert that back, and that clearly needs additional work. So, to that end, what else can we strut together here? Well, we could remove this shroud, and we could set this over to be a 3.75 meter, although I don't necessarily love that. I think I'll leave it like this, but I do want to make sure that the engine is strutted like this. So we're going to have these from the fuel tank strut to the engine. And then we can't really do something like this, can we? Actually, we could. That should automatically detach. Now we can re-enable the shroud here. And I wonder if that would be more solid. Surely this is going to be relatively solid, right? I do want to change around the way these are done. Specifically, I want them to be looking a little bit more straight up and down. So that would be going about here or so. They were just a little more crooked than I wanted them to be. They're still a little bit crooked, but I guess it's reasonably fine. Okay, let's see if that fixes that particular structural integrity problem. We can re-enable that shroud. That should be just a visual thing. And I actually intended to re-enable that shroud, but for now, this will be fine. Okay, so let's get this loaded on up. And we'll see if this thing is a little bit more stable. Fingers crossed. Last time, the problems were revealed right off of the pad. Still looks like there's a bend going on there. There definitely is. We're still struggling with this joint, but it is better. It's definitely better than it was. But we can see there's still an oscillation here. And there we go. Now it's starting to move. It actually looks like the problem now is this stack separator connecting with our fuel tank here. So we can definitely do something about that. So I'm going to revert that back, and if that's where the joint issue now is, I think the joint was multifaceted previously. We were having issues with multiple parts detaching. So I'm going to shroud this, and now what we need to do is run a strut from here over to here, about like that, and I'm going to do the same on this other side. About like that. That should hopefully give us what we need. Although we want this to be in quad symmetry on all of these. So from here to here, and then from here to here. That should fix that joint. Okay, this also might be due to the fact that we're using a stack separator here instead of a decoupler. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's put this out on the pad, and maybe we can get our actual delta V test done now that we've dealt with our structural integrity issue. And I think the reason why this didn't become obvious earlier is because we had significantly less weight up above that stack separator. We've added a lot of fuel up there. We've increased the amount of fuel up there by, what would that be, like 25%? Something along those lines. Okay, let's see how this joint goes. Keeping an eye on the joint. We definitely still have a bit of oscillation here. The oscillation is now on this tank. This joint is solid. This joint is not. What else can we connect this to, though? It's connected directly here via 4 struts. It's connected to this engine via 4 struts. And it's connected to this strut connector. I don't know, we may just have to live with that. So we're currently at about a 10-kilometer apoapsis. I'm bringing this up to about a 15. And now we're going to start heading over here. The question is, how is that strut, or rather, how is this joint going to hold with the aerodynamic forces that this is entailing? Actually, it's holding pretty well as soon as we turned. Intriguing. This was not necessarily anticipated. As soon as we stop turning, it starts to oscillate a little bit again. But in theory, that's not a big deal. That said, we're having a bit of a hard time holding that attitude. That's noted. But we're just going to hold here. We're definitely doing much better on that apoapsis height, as expected from the differing ascent profile. So 15, 14, 13, and 12. Okay. And off we go. We want to go to horizontal velocity up here. So our apoapsis height is just barely in space. I'm not convinced about the Super Heavy booster's positioning. It's a little awkward that we have to manually position here. And what's our thrust to weight? 0.64? We actually need to be at prograde, I think, not horizontal velocity up. I don't think that we have the thrust on just this Kerbodyne to get there. I believe that we have the delta V, though. We can, at this point, ditch our fairing, and that will save us a little bit of weight, which is good. And I'm just going to burn at the prograde marker for now instead of horizontal velocity up. So this is going to be not necessarily as much speed as we want to have, but we can see that time to apoapsis is going down right now, but it's not going down very fast. Okay. So let's just burn here for the moment, targeting an apoapsis height of about 150. 98, 99, 100. I'm not at all convinced about the Super Heavy booster being far enough along, but we'll see. Time to apoapsis is going up. That's a good sign. So we have the Delta V here now. In theory, anyway. I don't know about the orbital maneuvers. That'll be spicy. We might have to burn some of this tank for that. Okay. There we go. 200 meters per second left. And let's see where we are. Ooh, we're very, very low in the atmosphere here on the Starship tanker. I don't know if we have the time here. So that's going to be interesting. A little bit less fuel in that initial tank, or even if we just... Oh, we're going absolutely the wrong way here. Yeah, that's going to be a spicy one. So this is indicative that we're getting here too late, right? That's what that means. We are actually able to turn this around, though. Hang on. Doing a re-entry burn here. Getting out the chutes. This actually seems okay. I'm surprised we had the attitude control with the air brakes only to get us flipped around like that. Cool. So this is actually not bad. That's a very viable thing then. I like it. So that's solid. We have enough fuel to do the maneuvers, guaranteed. We'll just have to burn some in our tanker from our tank, which is not necessarily unexpected. Okay, chutes deploying, and that is slowing us down a little bit further. Okay, commencing a bit of a braking burn here. Okay, we need to slow this down a fair amount more. And splashdown. Okay, so that was surprising to me that we were able to correct that attitude. That was quite surprising. Even without the chutes, we were able to correct that attitude. That's a really good sign. So we can recover that, and we're definitely going to do that. I guess this is now graduated into a full flight since that worked? Which I'm surprised by. I am quite surprised that we had the attitude control for that. Remarkable. I expected that booster to just splash down hard and go poof. Absolutely. I expected us to not be able to flip around our attitude control. But okay, I guess we'll take that. That's absolutely fine. It's dicey. We got to go quick with it. No doubt about that. Let's hop over to the tracking station and see where we are in our orbit here. So the Starship tanker ship is not yet to apoapsis, so the timing here is working out. I'm absolutely shocked that that worked. It's very, very surprising to me. But okay, so we've got about 200 meters per second left in this engine. The question is, how much do we actually need to circularize here? Because we burned prograde, it's going to be a little bit more than we would have otherwise needed. Circularization is just under 200. Okay, so that is noted. Oh, we don't have any crew in this. Well, that's awkward. I guess we'll have to send up a separate crew flight to rendezvous with this. I guess that's fine. I intended to have at least one crewman in this. But yeah, we could definitely do that. That's not a big deal. So that's okay. I should have noticed that. That's entirely on me. And also something that we should do is deploy our photovoltaic panels. So I guess Bill just kind of slept in, and we'll just send him up on his own flight. That's fine. Bill doesn't weigh very much. It's not very difficult to do. Okay, so we're warping forward here. We've got about 30 seconds. 3210, mark. Okay, so that looks good. And we're just getting ourselves into proper orbit here. Yes, this is going to burn off nearly all of this fuel. That's okay. We have enough to do what we need to do. Okay, just getting that last little bit of burn done there. Cool. So we'll put this in kill rot. That'll be fine. And we're basically out of fuel in this tank. We are pretty much where we need to go, though. So the rescue craft is here. The Starship tanker is here. The idea here is we're going to attach this radially to the Starship tanker, right? That's the overall concept here. I'm actually shocked that that worked as well as it did. All things considered. So the next craft that we send up, we could actually omit this part and just leave Bill in the Mark 1-3 command pod right next to the tanker. That is a theoretical possibility for sure. Interesting to note, definitely. So we got into orbit with a tiny amount of fuel to spare, and that's fine. We can pull fuel from here if we need to, and that should still be enough to get us to the moon and back in theory. With the 2 Kerbal S4 256s almost full, I think. We may be able to pull some fuel from this Rockamax fuel tank, but we would need to have like a grab arm, which we don't have right now. I think for the moment, we just need to bring Bill up since he overslept and missed his flight. Come on, Bill. So we're going to need to be targeting a pretty low apoapsis for this, about 100 kilometers, I'm thinking, and we're just going to put Bill in a very tiny expendable ship here. It doesn't need to be much. It just needs to deposit him to the location, and then he can just, like, airlock out, right? So the Bill taxi is going to be very, very simple for us. No problem whatsoever. We're just going to make this be like a simple 2-stage rocket, I think, is all we're going to do. So we're going to put in something along the lines of, what is our lightest one-seater? The lander can? Probably. Let's go with the lander can. And this is not going to be recovered. So that's absolutely fine. We're going to not put parachutes on it. This is going to be expended. We're going to put in like a nose cone on top. That'll be fine. So an aerodynamic nose cone like that will make it be dark, I guess. And then our fuel tank here, we could definitely just toss in something along the lines of a T400 fuel tank. And then we would just need to have a Terrier on this. Does this have a reaction wheel? It does. Okay. So we need to have like a Terrier on here. Then we'd have a TD12 decoupler, I believe, is this size. Yep, that'll be fine. And then we just have a couple of engines here. So we would, or rather a couple of T800s, something like that. And then a T45. And these stages can be combined together. So it would just be something along the lines of this. And as our altitude goes up, we would have this be over Kerbal. We can see that we'd have 726 delta V, but as we go up, we'd have about 3,000 delta V overall. So that's absolutely fine. We'll have plenty of delta V to get there. The main problem, of course, is this lander can is a little bulbous, and that creates some unfortunate looks for this. But we'll just have to live with that. We'll call this the Bill taxi. There we go. And we want to make sure that Bill is inside of this. Not Jeb, but Bill. Of course, Bill's not a pilot. So that means we need a remote guidance computer on here. So that is going to be something along the lines of, I think, a medium? Nope, a medium is too much. A small. There we go. And we should probably have some form of electrical flow here too, and that'll be fine. It does not need to be retractable, so we'll just put that on something like that. Okay, so this should get Bill up there. Let's put this out on the pad. Let's get him lifted. All we're targeting here is 100 kilometers, because we're going to need to rendezvous with the taxi, or rather with the not Starship, whatever that monstrosity is. And that is then going to need to rendezvous with the tanker Starship, and we'll do the modifications at that point. Okay, so that's all great. We're going to need to send up a second tanker Starship as well. But Bill should have been in that first one. That's absolutely fine. I want to check this thrust to weight. Oh, 1.22. That's kind of low on the thrust to weight. It's probably fine. I expected this to be a little bit higher thrust to weight, though. Let's bring it back, and let's strap on some SRBs. I want a little higher thrust to weight for sure. I'm not going to like asparagus stage this. I'm just going to toss on a couple of cheap SRBs, and that's fine. So we can do a like radial decoupler here, and then toss in a couple of fairly small SRBs. Thumpers are probably wildly overkill for this, and we're going to go with them. So that's okay. We can do something like that. We would then, of course, want to have there be a small aerodynamic nose cone on top of those, move them down ever so slightly, strut them in, and that should give us more than enough thrust to weight. I think we could have done it probably anyway, but I didn't want to risk it since we have no parachutes on this, and our abort stage is basically non-existent. So there's that. 2.29 is much better thrust to weight, and that'll get us going a lot faster. So that'll be fine. Let's get Bill into orbit, and that'll be okay. Again, we're targeting 100 kilometers. So, much better thrust to weight. Let's go. Any moment now. You can do it, KSP. There we go. It didn't like that very much. I don't know why, but we can throttle up, and off we go. Fantastic. So we're going to have a really solid apoapsis quite quickly here. We're going to be angling over basically towards the horizon. I mean, we could just stick with prograde, but I'm not going to do that. I want basically pure horizontal speed. So up we go, punching our way through the atmosphere here. 10 kilometers. And let's go ahead and start heading over here. This is very, very maneuverable. A little too maneuverable, if I'm honest. Okay, I'm just going to put us about here. SRBs are going to be detaching shortly. Farewell, SRBs. They blew each other up a little bit, but that's fine. So at this point, we want to be heading over this way. Ooh, hang on a moment. This is way too maneuverable. Okay, so we got our flip carried out. That's absolutely fine. Bill just wanted to show off a bit there, I'm sure. And we're just going to hang out here at horizontal velocity up. Cool. So we're getting as much horizontal velocity as we can at this point. We can see our time to apoapsis is going down, but slowly, and that's absolutely fine. Apoapsis height is currently 50 kilometers. It's actually not going up all that quickly, but we expect that at this point. The apoapsis height will start to go up much more quickly later. We don't really need more vertical speed. What we really need here is more horizontal speed. That said, we do have some drag going on, which isn't surprising. But we will be ditching this stage fairly shortly. 60 kilometer apoapsis now, looking good. We're nearly at orbital speed. 70 kilometer apoapsis, 80, 90, and that's just over 100 with 60 meters per second left in this stage. Okay, so that seems absolutely fine. And of course, we are going to be doing a circularization burn right about here, which is going to burn off some of this fuel. There we go. And we're going to be, of course, targeting our craft here. I'm not sure which one this is. Rescue craft, Starship tanker ship. It might be the Starship tanker ship. I think it is, but we'll find out. So we need to head over to the node here. We're still in atmosphere at this time, so I'm going to physics warp. Cool. And we have dropped down our apoapsis a little bit, but that's okay. I don't mind that. That's not actually a problem. How are we doing on our electric charge? We're doing fine. And of course, we need to extend our solar panels. There we go. And we'll warp our way on over to this burn and get ourselves circularized. So this is going to take about half of it is going to come out of this stage. That looks good. 50 seconds, 40, 30, 20, 10, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. And there we go. We are now officially in orbit. That didn't take very much at all. We don't need to tumble around over here, thanks. And it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, Bill is going to be delivered to the correct ship. I'm not 100% sure whether it's this tanker or this tanker, but it's one of them. I believe it's this one. But that's absolutely fine, and a job for next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Kintogan, Ali Lee, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nix Marty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.